Fungua milango Baba. Aha. Fungua milango iliyofungwa Baba. Fanya njia pasipo na njia. Fungua milango iliyofungwa Baba. Fanya njia pasipo na njia. Paulo na Sila pale gerezani walikuita, milango ikafunguka. Nami nakuita, fungua milango, fungua milango, wana wako wapitie. Ulifanya njia bahari ya Shamu, wana wa Israeli wakapita, mpasua bahari. Nakuita Baba, fanya njia watu wapitie. Fungua milango iliyofungwa Baba. Fanya njia pasipo na njia. Fungua milango iliyofungwa Baba. Fanya njia pasipo na njia.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon again. Who can remind us of the previous lesson? We learned something last time. What did we learn about? Force. Who can remind us of what we talked about when we were mentioning force? Force. Yes? Force can make moving objects to stop moving. Good. Force can make moving objects to move faster. What else did we learn about force? We were all in class before we start today's lesson. Gaiwa? Of movement. Force can make a moving object to change its direction. And we mentioned that there are several types of forces. Who can remember the types of force? Like for example, one, gravity, gravitational force, correct? Friction is a force, good. And there are inertia. Inertia is also a force. We say that the force is measured using a unit called? You raise your hand. No chorus answers, please. Somebody who has not spoken there. Newton. The measurement, the units used for measuring force is called newtons. Can we say newtons? Newtons. And we said there is an instrument which can be used to measure the amount of force. What was the name of that instrument? Mutwa? Yes, Daniel. The spring balance. Good. Today's lesson, we shall be talking about something which we have observed in one way or another, but we may not have touched it, but we have seen. We have seen some of it, we have felt some of it around us. Now we shall be talking about the solar system. The solar system. The solar system. Before I go further, I'll allow my assistant teacher to take us through for now. So I'd like you to pay attention. If you feel that there's something you need to note down, you make sure you write. Let's go.
Hello and welcome to yet another session of science. In today's edition, we are going to study our space. When you wake up at night, especially on a clear day, you realize that there is the moon and several other blinking bodies. We may not reach them, but we can see them from far. We want to see, apart from the moon and the blinking bodies, if there are any other objects inside or in the space. Now, scientists have managed to go into space and get more information about it. The person who studies the space or studies the system in the space is called an astronomer. So an astronomer studies astronomy. So what do they find out, or what have they found out during their study of the space? They realized that during the day, there is the sun. So the only heavenly body that can be seen during the day is the sun. And they wondered why at night they see several bodies, while during the day there is only one. And while up in space, they came to realize that the sun may be probably the closest foreign body or heavenly body to the earth. And because it produces a lot of light, its light bars the lights from the other foreign bodies from reaching us during the day. That is why at night, when there is no sunlight, we on earth are able to see other blinking foreign bodies in the atmosphere. The sun, therefore, produces heat and light, and it is that light which prevents us from seeing the other heavenly bodies during the day. Remember, the sun, according to their study, is at the center of the system that we are talking about. The sun, again, of all the bodies we are going to talk about, is the largest and is said to be luminous, meaning it produces its own light. That, therefore, makes it become a star. Stars produce their own lights. So the sun at this end is the center of the system that we are studying. It is very hot. Actually, astronomers say the sun can be as hot as 20 million degrees Celsius in summer. Very hot. And that is why it is made up of hot, glowing gases. Anything that gets closer to the sun changes to gas because of the high intensity of heat. Because of its size, all the other foreign bodies in the sky revolve around it. It pulls them towards it because it is big and has the high amount of gravitational pull. Remember, they said that the sun does not move. It pulls the other foreign bodies around it. Like I mentioned initially, also in the sky is the moon. Our earth has only one moon. They came to realize that the moon goes around the earth in anti-clockwise direction. Our earth revolves around the sun in the clockwise direction, But the moon goes round our earth in the anti-clockwise direction. So the moon becomes the earth's satellite. A satellite of a body is a body that goes round it. Because the moon goes round the earth, therefore the moon becomes the earth's satellite. The moon does not produce its own light. They came to realize, however, that it gets its light from the sun. It is therefore a reflector. It is non-luminous. Do you remember what I told you a luminous body is?
What is a luminous body? Now, when we were talking about the sun, we realized that the solar system is made up of the sun and the planets. So when we talk about our solar system, we're talking about the planets which surround or which normally go around the sun. Understood? Yes. The scientists who study what takes place in space have a name. What did we call them? What do we call the scientists who study what's found in space? Astronomers. They are called astronomers. Can you say astronomers?
Astronomers.
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 An astronomer is a scientist who studies what is found in space. Understood?
Yes.
Now, among the things found in space, we have an object called the sun. It is made up of very hot glowing gases, hot burning gases. They are so hot, the gases burning there are so hot such that whatever moves very close to the sun will end up being changed into gas. It will be burnt and will change into gas. It is said that at times it reaches almost 200 million degrees Celsius. And because of its size, the sun is a star and it is one of the big stars around. It has its own type of gravitational pull. So it attracts the planets and other heavenly bodies around it to move closer to it. Understood? So, when we are looking at the solar system, we are looking at the sun and the objects around it. You realize that the sun produces its own light. It also produces its own heat. An object which can produce its own light is called to be luminous. It's called to be luminous. Luminous. The sun. First, it is a star, and it is luminous. Luminous means produces its own light. And we learned that the moon, our earth has got only one moon, but the moon does not produce its own light. The moon does not produce its own light. It acts like a mirror. It acts like a mirror. It is able to reflect. The light comes from the sun and bounces off the shiny surface of the moon, and then it reaches us on earth. So at night, we might see the moon shining brightly, but the light it is bringing to earth is not its own light. It is light which is bouncing off its surface. So we say the moon is non-luminous. Moon is non-luminous. It reflects light from the sun. The moon can only act as a mirror, like a reflector, to bounce away light from the sun for the light to reach us, especially at night.
Very good. A luminous body produces its own light. And an example that we have seen is the sun, which provides light to its satellite, the moon, by reflection. Also in space are smaller foreign bodies, which we are going to study. First is Mercury. Mercury is this that is closest to the sun. Mercury is a foreign body that also goes around the sun in clockwise direction. It takes 88 days to revolve the sun once. 88 days. It is not visible because of its size. It's so small that the light from the sun does not allow us to see it. It is the second from our Earth. That means when you come from the sun, you reach Mercury, then another foreign body before Earth. Mercury, like I've said, is the smallest, and it takes 88 days to go around the sun. It's very hot and does not have life. There is no oxygen in it. No life can be contained or can be sustained in Mercury because it receives light and heat at very high intensity. Close after Mercury is Venus, another heavenly body that goes round the sun in 225 days once. To revolve around the Earth, to revolve around the sun, Venus takes 225 days. It is brighter than Mercury, though slightly away from the sun compared to Mercury. Why do you think Mercury could be brighter? Mercury is brighter because it receives more light from the sun, but Venus is the brightest because it is bigger than Mercury in size. So it receives and reflects more light from the sun than Mercury. So it is right to say that Mercury is smaller than Venus, but Venus is the brightest. Venus can be seen very early in the morning when the sun is not very bright, and can also be seen very late in the evening when the sun sinks, when the light from the sun is dark. Because of its appearance very early in the morning and very late in the evening, it is therefore called a morning or an evening star. Remember, Venus is not a star, because I told you stars produce their own lights. But Venus qualifies to be called an evening or a morning star because it twinkles. It is so bright in the morning and very bright in the evening when the sun is down. Again, why is Venus the hottest? I know why it is the brightest. It is the brightest because it is bigger than Mercury, thus reflects more light than Mercury. But why is it the hottest? Venus is the hottest because it contains the greatest component of carbon dioxide. it is highly concentrated with carbon dioxide, which is dense, which is heavier than the normal air, and that increases the pressure, therefore increasing its temperature. Just like Mercury, Venus is also found before the Earth when you come from the Sun. Now, the truth.
Now, we mentioned that the Sun is the center of the solar system, and that out of this, other bodies found going round the Sun. We have the closest, the one which is nearest to the Sun. Which one is it? Which one is the nearest to the Sun? It is still on the screen. Yes, so you gave me a good answer. Let's try, Charles. Be careful. Mercury. Mercury is the one closest to the Sun, isn't it? And we realize that in as much as Mercury is the one closest to the Sun, it might not be the brightest, especially as seen from the Earth. Mercury is somehow smaller than the next planet, which is Venus. Venus is the second from the Sun, but it is bigger than Mercury. Now, why is Venus brighter? Or why do you know what say Venus is the brightest among the planets? Yet, Mercury is the one closest to the Sun. We learned that because of its size, it is relatively bigger. It is somehow bigger than Mercury. So because of the bigger body, it has more surface area where the light from the Sun can land on it, and now it can be seen much more easily as compared to Mercury, which is smaller. Venus is also normally seen early in the morning at the time when we call it is dawn. And that's good. And that's good. We can see it from Earth early in the morning towards the eastern direction. And then it is also seen late in the evening at dusk, especially during specific times of the year. And that's good. So for that reason, when we see Mercury in the morning, we refer to it as, at times they are referred to as stars, but they are not stars, they are planets. Remember, stars are luminous. Like we say, the Sun is a star, it is a luminous body, meaning that it can produce its own light. And that's true. But other bodies which cannot produce their own light, like the moon and the planets, are non-luminous. Can you say non-luminous?
Non-luminous.
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 Non-luminous means they don't produce their own light, but they can receive light from another source, like the Sun, and then when the light bounces off their surfaces, we say they are reflecting the light. The light bounces and then we are able to see. Like we normally see the moon, and the moon gives us light, and the light we get from the moon is normally originally light from the Sun. And that's true. It's only that the Sun produces the light, and it is landed on the surface of the moon, and the moon acts like a mirror to reflect the light to us on Earth. And then we get what we call moonlight, the light from the moon. But it is not produced by the moon itself. And that's true. So before we go to the third planet, we should realize that we have the first two planets between the Sun and the Earth. Which planet is the first one from the Sun? Plus,
Mercury.
which one follows?
Venus.
Then we come to Earth. We learned that Mercury and Venus, they cannot hold life because one, the temperature is too hot for life, and two, they contain excessive amount of carbon dioxide gas. They don't have enough oxygen to sustain life.
Two planets, or the two bodies that you find before you reach the Earth, are called inner planets. That is Mercury and Venus. They are called inner planets because they are found inside the orbit of the Earth. They are between the Sun and the Earth. Then our Earth takes 365 days, and the only heavenly body with life. Why do you think our Earth has life? Why do you think our Earth has animals? Why do you think we have plants growing on Earth? It is because it is on Earth that we have oxygen. So of all the heavenly bodies we are going to study, only Earth has oxygen. Only Earth has life. Again, apart from Venus and Mercury, our Earth is the first one with a moon, and it has only one moon, which goes round it in 28 days. After our Earth, next is Mars. Mars takes 687 days to revolve round the Sun once. Scientists have been able to get to the Mars as a planet, and they discovered that it has two moons, and the surface of its atmosphere or the ground is red. Mars contains red soil. It is the closest heavenly body to our Earth in the outer scale. It's also known as the red planet because its red soil reflects red light from the space to our Earth. It's not too hot and not too cold because the temperature or the heat reaching it from the sun is just almost at the same distance as the heat reaching our Earth. Therefore, it can support life. But there is no life in it because it does not have oxygen. After Mars is the biggest.
Now we have immediately after Venus we go to Earth, isn't it? And Earth is the planet in which we are found. We are found in a planet called Earth. Understood? Now why do we have life? That is why we have animals living on Earth, why we have plants living on Earth. We have plants and animals which survive on Earth because the Earth has got enough amount of oxygen. Understood? Understood? Yes. Oxygen is the gas that we breathe in, and it is the gas that helps us to survive as animals. Plants also use oxygen for their own survival, and especially at night. Our Earth has enough amount of carbon dioxide gas. Carbon dioxide gas is very important for green plants, for them to manufacture their own food. What is the process through which green plants manufacture their own food? What do we call that process? The process is called photosynthesis. Can you say photosynthesis?
Photosynthesis.
And our Earth contains enough amount of carbon dioxide gas which the plants use to make their own food, and eventually as animals we also get our food and energy from plants. So because Earth has enough oxygen for animal survival and it has enough carbon dioxide for plant survival, we say that it has the requirements for good life for both plants and animals. We realized that the first two planets were very close to the sun. They were too hot. The temperature was too high. There was no oxygen, so life cannot be found there. But now on Earth, we are able to get living things. Understood? Mars, which is the fourth planet from the sun after our Earth, is also said to have almost the same conditions. Almost the same conditions, but not exactly the same as the conditions found on Earth. Understood? Understood?
Yes.
The amount of oxygen in Mars may not be the same as amount of oxygen on Earth. Mars is also called the red planet. It's also called the
Red planet.
Why is it called the red planet? You can tell us why. From what we learned here, why do we call planet Mars the red planet? Why do we call planet Mars the red planet? Yes? It appears red. Clap for her, please. Again. We call it the red planet because it appears red in color. Meaning that it has a lot of red soil. It has a lot of red soil. The surface of Mars has red soil. When the sun is hot, it is shining on the red soil. The red soil will reflect bright light, and that light will also be red in color. That's good. That is why we call Mars the red planet. It is planet number 4. Mars, planet number 4 from the sun. Number. Somebody is saying what? What do we call the first planet? Planet number 1. Mercury. Planet number 2. Venus. Planet number 3. Earth. Planet number 4. Mars. And it is also called the red planet. Then let's go to the next one, which is also the biggest.
With 16 moons, Jupiter. It has rings around it. It has set as the dish shape our Earth. Therefore, it can support life. But there is no life in it because it does not have oxygen. After Mars is the biggest, the largest, with 16 moons, Jupiter. It has rings around it. It has circular rings around it that we may not see unless you use very powerful weather instruments. Remember, the faint rings cannot be seen because they don't reflect light. They are not colored. It has the greatest force of gravitational pull from the sun because of its massive size. It's so big that one of its moon is almost the size. Very big indeed. Like I said, it has 16 moons and is found on the outer space of our Earth, and it takes very long time to go around the sun. After Jupiter is The second largest planet called Saturn.
So what is the biggest planet? Jupiter. How many moons does it have?
16.
And it has the greatest gravitational pull. Understood? It also has some rings, but the rings are not visible. Eh?
Saturn is said to be the most beautiful one when observed from our Earth on the Sun. After Jupiter is the second largest planet called Saturn. Saturn is said to be the most beautiful one when observed from our Earth. What makes Saturn beautiful? Saturn, just like Jupiter, has rings, actually 3 beautiful rings. These rings are colored and they reflect the beautiful colors to our Earth. That is why scientists on Earth call it the beautiful planet. It has about 18 moons and is said to be having the greatest number of moons in the sky. All these moons go around it in the anti-clockwise direction. Next, or the seventh one, is the outer planet also with 15 moons, the lightest planet in space. Light in the sense that it is largely made up of the lightest gases, or the lightest gas called methane. Uranus is the only planet that goes around the Sun in the opposite direction. All the other planets, like we shall see, revolve around the Earth in the clockwise direction, except Uranus, that revolves in the anti-clockwise direction. Remember, Jupiter has 16, Saturn 18, and Uranus 15 moons. All these moons go around them, and therefore they are their satellites. When we started, remember I told you that satellites of a heavenly body goes around that heavenly body. Like our Earth has only one satellite that goes around it. Number 8 has 8 moons and is also found after our Earth. Therefore, is also called an outer planet. That is Neptune. This is Neptune with 8 moons, followed by the farthest one from us. It is the farthest and appears to be the smallest, but no, Mercury is the smallest. Mercury may be bigger because it is the closest one to the Sun, but this one is the farthest, the coldest, and the darkest. It is cold because the light reaching it, or the heat reaching it, is faint. It is dark because the light reaching it is also faint. It is also cold, such that in winter its temperature can get up to minus 230 degrees Celsius. Very cold. That cannot support life. It has completely no moon, and it takes the longest time to go around the Sun. It takes 248 years. 248 years. The other 8 planets may have oval orbits, but Pluto has an elliptical orbit. As you can see in that diagram, it has an elliptical orbit that is not round and is not oval. In between Mars and Jupiter, there are foreign bodies that are numerous, that are small, and keep rotating and revolving in between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. They are held in between the 2 planets by the force of gravity of the 2 planets. They are in between 1,500 and 1,800 in number. They are not planets, but are minor planets because they also get their heat and light from the sun. They can also produce their own light by friction. As they move in space, they cause friction. And friction causes heat. Therefore, they can cause or create their own heat. Remember, we have said we only have two inner planets.
Now, we mentioned that when we are talking about the sun and the planets, we want to compare these planets in relation to the Earth. That is, we want to check between where the sun is and where the Earth is, and again where the other planets are. The planets between the sun and our Earth have a name, what we call them. Planets found between the sun and the Earth, they have a name, what we call them. We call them the inner planets. We call them the inner planets. Inner comes from the word inside. It comes from the word inside. If this is the sun, then we have orbit. An orbit is a path followed by planets. The first one from the sun we said was called Mercury. The second one was Venus. Then the third one is Earth. Mercury and Venus are called inner planets because they are found between the orbit of the Earth and the sun itself. Understood? Yes. That is why we call these two inner planets. So which ones are the inner planets? Mercury and Venus. They are found inside. We are not counting the Earth. Understood? Yes. Then, all the other planets which will be found after the Earth are normally called outer planets. Understood? So after the Earth we had what we call the fourth one? Mars. Then Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and the last one? Pluto. So how many outer planets do we have? The inner planets are only two. So how many outer planets do we have? 6. Do we agree with me? 7. Do we agree with her? 7. Let us count. When we are counting, we don't count the Earth itself. Outer planets, when we are calling inner planets, we only mention these two. We didn't count the Earth, isn't it? So even when we want to mention outer planets, we shall only mention from this one up to the end. How many are they? Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So all these 6 are called outer planets. So can you mention the outer planets? Very fast. 1. The first outer planet from the sun. 1. Mars, followed by Jupiter, good. Other. Saturn, there with her. Yes. Next after Saturn. Here. After Saturn? What? After Saturn, Neptune. Do you agree with that? No. Say Neptune, you don't agree? Uranus. After Uranus? Neptune. And the last in the outer planet class? Pluto. So, when we are talking about planets, we are aware that we can group them either as inner planets or outer planets. And we should also remember that between Mars and Jupiter, there are also other heavenly bodies found in between here. They are called the asteroids. Asteroids. Can you say asteroids?
Asteroids.
So it is a belt made of floating objects which can also produce their own light, especially when they rub against each other. Which force is that produced when things rub against each other? The force is called friction. Understood? So the asteroids found between Mars and Jupiter are called asteroids. They are held in between those two planets by the gravitational pull of both Mars and Jupiter. Understood?
Do you remember? Name them. Very good. That is Mercury and Venus. Which of the 9 bodies did we say is the hottest?
Which one is the hottest? The hottest? Okay.
Good. Venus. And which is the smallest?
Mercury. Somebody else? Pluto. Let's hear.
Very good. Mercury. Which one did we say is the farthest?
The one farthest away from the sun. The one which is found farthest away from the sun, huh? Pluto.
Pluto. Very good. Remember we said that all planets revolve around the sun. They are pulled towards the sun, which gives them light. So planets don't produce their own lights. They reflect. They are non-luminous. Until next time, we have come to the end of our lesson today. Keep going into space. Keep researching around the planets and keep finding more about them. Till then, bye-bye. Hello, and welcome to this another edition.
Good. We learned something on the solar system. The solar system. What we call the main source of heat and light on Earth. What gives us heat and light? The sun. The sun is the main source of heat and light and all energy on Earth. How many planets do we have? How many planets do we have? Here? 9 planets. Is it correct?
Yes.
Good. Which one is the planet which can support life? Again? Earth. Good. Clap for him. Which one is the brightest? planet, brightest, which can be seen brightest from the earth? Venus, clap for her. Which one is the coldest? The coldest. Oscar? Mercury coldest. No, Mercury cannot be coldest. Mercury is the closest to the sun. It is very hot. Jupiter? Pluto, correct. Clap for him. Which planet is known as the red planet? The red planet. Here. This bed. Oscar. Mars. Good. Clap for him. Why is it called the red planet? Why? Why is it called the red planet? Before we call it a day. Why is it called a red planet? It has red soil on its surface, and the red soil is the one which reflects that bright red color. That's good. Good. Which planet has got rings which shine? Rings around it, and the rings are normally very beautiful and very colorful. Bright rings which shine around it. Saturn, we agree with her. That Saturn is the one with rings. We agree with her. Why are you not confident? Yes, Saturn has rings around it. Very beautiful one. Even Jupiter has rings, but the rings are normally not visible. They are not visible. It is the rings around Saturn which are normally very visible and very brightly colored. Rings around Jupiter are not brightly colored. They are diminished by light. That's good. Okay, I think with that we can end the lesson. How are you doing? Now after this, the next lesson we will be going through will be maths. So you will prepare your teacher with me and your program will start.
Fungua milango baba. Aha. Fungua milango iliyofungwa baba. Fanya njia pasipo na njia. Fungua milango iliyofungwa baba. Fanya njia pasipo na njia. Paulo na Sila pale gerezani walikuita, milango ikafunguka. Nami nakuita, fungua milango, fungua milango, wana wako wapitie. Ulifanya njia bahari ya Shamu, wana wa Israeli wakapita. Mpasua